Hey everyone, this is Pause or Repeat. Here we figure out whether a game is really worth your time and money. Today's game is Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It has been a long while since the last Dragon Age game, 10 years to be exact, so this game is the series' chance to bring new fans as well as old fans back to the fold. But did they drop the ball, or was it worth the wait? Let's find out by first looking over the gameplay. Dragon Age: The Veilguard is an action-adventure RPG taking place in the world of Thedas. In this game, you take control of your main character Rook, who you get to customize to your liking. Alongside Rook, there is a cast of supporting companions that you will be able to party up with in a group of 3 to tackle the quests in the game. The gameplay loop consists of exploring an area as you complete quest objectives, finishing simple puzzles, and of course, fighting enemies and even bosses. Combat is centered around Rook, but you are able to also issue commands to your party members, who are also able to combo abilities together. As you defeat enemies, you will level up and flesh out your skill tree, eventually going into a specialization as well. The skill tree also unlocks different abilities to use alongside passive upgrades, the former which is used by gaining momentum by attacking enemies. The gameplay loop falls into place fairly early on as you unlock your damage rotation quite quickly. But how does the story fare alongside the gameplay? The story follows Rook and their companions as they try to save the world. Everything starts with you chasing the ancient elf Solus, who is trying to destroy the Veil, a prison for the elven gods, and transfer them to a quote better place. Inadvertently, the elven gods Elganon and Gillenane are released, and Solus is instead imprisoned. It is now up to Rook and friends to stop them from spreading the blight across the world. But now the question still stands: pause or repeat? Do you put your hands on your hips a lot, Chris? Because I know I don't.
I put my hands on my
head. And for some reason, this character, every conversation, regardless of what dialogue option you pick, he's just like, well, it's a good thing we're here because we're going to go stop them. It's like he has such a huge main character syndrome, and it just ends up being really cringy. What did you feel about this, Chris?
Well, I feel like a lot of this game is a bit kind of cringy. I mean, yes, it looks very, very flashy. You know, it seems expensive, but I feel like everyone's like leaving themselves like scratching their heads, wondering, who is this even made for? Like, it feels like that HBO adaptation of Harry Potter series, and you're like, who are you even making this for? Because, like, we are so sold on the Legendary franchise that, like, made it so great to begin with. Or, like, you can even compare it to the Lord of the Rings adaptation of Rings of Power. You're like, oh, God, I don't want to see any of this. And so when I start to play this game, I start to wonder, like, rated M for mature, who is your audience? Because the story plays out like it was written for kids. I don't know about you, Henrik. It's like...
No, yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, when you compare the story in this iteration to the previous games had such a darker take on the world. You really felt like the stakes were there and that everyone who is in this universe are really just fighting for their life every single day because, you know, some great calamity could happen to their town at any moment. And in this one, it's like, yeah, we're going to go fight these 2 gods. We're going to chase after them like this is a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah, you
and
completely
it's like,
nailed
this
it.
is a completely different feel than what I'm expecting from a Dragon Age game.
But why does every fantasy lore game always feel like it's just now a direct knockoff of Skyrim? It's like, all right, kiddos, here's the scoop. Dragon Age: The Veilguard's not 1, but 2 gods. They got bored and they declared war on the entire universe because, Henrik, sharing is hard. And it's like, and then they go, it's up to you, the Rook, to clean up their universal tantrum in a story that's totally mature. I pinky promise. And then all of a sudden it's got a lot of that like RPG elements in the game that let you be whoever you want to be. And I think that's really, really cool. I mean, especially in the beginning of the game, you could get very lost just playing with the character creator for over an hour before you even launch into the game. But then, you know, there's another round of, you know, the pronoun wars for the anti-woke trolls, you know, battling their own gender identity crisis. So I don't know what the hell is going on. But like, how did you feel about the whole 7 companions? Like, I just felt like I wasn't even invested at all. I know they got their own drama-filled backstory. You know, you will rise together to become the Veilguard. But like, I don't know. It just didn't scream unity for me. I felt like I was in a group therapy on the battlefield and just didn't really care too much about any of them.
You know, that is the thing. It's like, I appreciate you gave us a lot of options for companions to go do things with, but when you have that many side characters, it's hard to get invested in all of them. You end up being
Yeah,
only feeling like you want to get invested in like a couple of them at most, and they have side quests, but
yeah.
do you really feel like you want to do the side quests to a character you don't
The
really
side
interact
quests are
with? You know?
so lame in this game too, because it's
Yeah.
always like it seems like they're coming right across as like the PS3 style, where like you're only going to do the side quests if it's on the way to your main objective, if that makes
And the
sense. Like you're
rewards are
not
never
gonna
really worth it either. It's not, it's like,
right.
oh, here's some experience and maybe an item that you might not use.
And the world is so beautiful, but like the exploration is kind of like little lame. I mean, I kind of laughed. Like I know a
It's
lot
very
of gamers,
linear.
yeah, and a lot of people
Yeah.
are already kind of pointing out like they're like again, it's a mature audience. Like we don't need you to literally tell us, hey, that green jar is full of health. Like why can't we just discover it on our own? I felt like I was playing the old school God of War trilogy all over again. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know, with
yeah.
all the color schematics,
Indicating
like
everything you got to do and where you got
yeah,
to go.
it,
Yeah.
it would have been a little bit cooler if they kind of kept to that allure and you just never know what you're gonna find in each kind of jar or table you're gonna break and etc. But it is kind of cool that you get up to 3 class options to choose from when it comes to your play style. You got the warrior, the mage, and the rogue. And I don't know about you, Henrik. Like, what was your combat style of choice when you entered the Dragon Age, the Veilguard?
So I went through the game as a rogue,
Okay,
and I picked this because I am a fan of the action combat in video games, and at least initially the action combat in this game was pretty fun because it looks very flashy, and I'm just in my element at this point, right?
yeah.
Then a few hours in, you kind of get into the groove of like, okay, I have my abilities of what I'm going to do for the rest of the game, and at this point, it's not really fun anymore because the enemies you're going up against are just the same enemies over and over again,
Yeah, bit
you know,
repetitive.
and over and over again, and it's like, just get me to the next story segment, guys,
But
because
that's the
you're
thing,
not
though.
teaching anything new to me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. You actually just kind of finished what I was about to say too. It's the story element, right? And like I think that's when they probably should have focused on some of these enemies and not being so repetitive, because I think they heavily focused on the story, but then the story is just so cringeworthy, and the dialogue just felt like it was
Yeah.
written by a Sims writer. Oh wait, it was. And then, along the way, you do encounter 6 factions, and that's why I kind of made that joke about Skyrim, because, again, it's just
Mm.
like any kind of RPG element, right? Your Rook's backstory, the dialogue choices, and how much chaos you can cause on this already messed up continent will be dictated by your dialogue choices, because why United Land when you could just set it further on fire? And I think that's kind of the element that they were trying to go for, but like, believe it or not, Henrik, this is my first time ever jumping into the Dragon Age series. And
Oh,
so if I just
I'm
felt like
sorry.
I didn't want to go back. And so like knowing that this is created by the studio BioWare that makes one of my favorite games, Mass Effects, I'm kind of getting a little worried. Like I don't know if this is like something that they just focused on doing something over here, cuz I kept hearing that like Dragon Age was this game about nudity, genocide, gore and murder, but now it's like the Teletubbies. Like talk about a plot twist. Like I don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, how can you go from Game of Thrones to a show where it's the biggest conflict is whether Tinky Winky left the bag in the tubby custard? Like, I don't know what the heck is going on with this game, and it's just,
Well,
it
maybe that's
hurts.
an indication that you should go try one of the original games in the series because it
Yeah.
is very different. And I feel like I'm not the only one that thinks that as well. Like that the previous games just took a darker and better, actually better turn on the telling of this universe than this one. Because it's like you say, the universe is like you're being transported from Game of Thrones to like Teletubbies because there's not any feeling of dread that you're getting
Or
from the previous
drama,
games or drama.
connection with the character.
Yeah.
Like, I just go, wow, this world is so immersive. It's so beautiful to look at. But who exactly is this game for? And that's my biggest problem. Like, the story comes across like days of our lives. I'm the guy that likes to invest in the cutscenes. I felt myself button mashing through everything. I was like, I'm so sick and
Yeah.
tired of hearing anybody speak. And then obviously we covered it previously in the past with the whole side quest with the Bob and the pronoun things. And that's like nothing about this game. It's the actual story that hurts. Forget
Yeah,
the
that's
whole
a
other
very
nonsense.
tiny
That's
part of it.
super tiny part. I'm talking about the overall premise of the whole story. Just didn't really sell it for me. I could care less about it right now. And I think that's kind of the rumors about BioWare. They're just kind of moving on, focusing on Mass Effect, not going to do another DLC, and I can see why. And it shows. And so my verdict, Henrik, it's a pause. I mean, if it does go on sale, definitely jump in. I think you'll have a lot of fun with the combat. Not so much of the RPG tactics or tactical elements. There's so much in it. I mean, yeah, you could pause the screen, for a moment while you're in combat to switch up a new skill or an element to bring in. But other than that, I don't know. What were you vibing with it?
Yeah, it's a pause for me as well. There's not really a point in me going back and repeating this game because I
Yeah.
feel like I've gotten everything out of it that I
It's a long
would
game.
at this point. And it is a long game. There's
Yeah.
other things out there that you can dedicate your time to that will be a better experience. Even the older Dragon Age games, I'd say. And I do agree. If it goes on sale, maybe then it'll be worth it because it might be worth it to go through at least and try and see if you can get invested a little bit, but not for $70.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, it's a hefty price tag. So I'm assuming what I'm thinking you're gonna say.
it's a pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys definitely heard it from us. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a pause.